Welcome back, all you super geniuses out there, to another video lecture from supergenius99.com. And today we'll be talking about C sharp arrays. What are they? How can we use them? What are they good for? And no, it's not like war. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. No, C sharp arrays are good for something. Start off by defining an array. So, what is an array? According to Geeks for Geeks, an array is a group of like-typed variables that are referenced by a common name. My personal definition, array is a group of homogeneous data. By linking data to a singular structure, the program can manipulate and pass data around more efficiently. So, why do we need arrays? Okay. So, without arrays, when you have a large amount of data that you need to process, okay, it is easier to process it when it is in some sort of type of group than when it is just on individually separated and you have to kind of keep track of each one on its own. And so, for example, we're going to use a small example, but you can think about it if it was multiplied by 10 or even 100. So let's say you have 5 employees, but in your mind, think about 50 employees are 500 employees. So you got 5 employees' incomes and need yearly raises, okay? And so you're going to write some code that will apply the yearly raise of 2% to each one of these employees. So I created 5 employees, okay, different incomes. And then down here, I apply the 2% raise to each employee. In my code here, I have created those same float values, all right. And I output the before the raise, I apply the raise, and then I output after the raise. And so let's see what that looks like. And at the top, you'll see the employee values before the raise, and you'll see the employee values after the raise. And so what happens is when you're not using an array, you have to declare each and every individual employee, and you have to operate on each individual employee in a linear type fashion, okay? And so right now we're only doing 5, but you got to think about what if you had 50 employees? What if you had 500 employees? Then you would have to write this line of code 50 times or 500 times or 1,000 times or however many people are in said company to apply their yearly 2% raise. So when we have a raise, what we're allowed to do, we still got to declare our input the values of the employee salary somewhere. And this is supposed to be float. Sorry about that, guys. Not loat, but float. Okay. So when I have an array, I put all those values in, but rather than having to write a line of code for every single time I want to operate on the array, I can use a for loop and I can apply the whatever I need to apply. I can manipulate it or do whatever I need to do. So it's easier to work with in the long run. So here's what the code looks like when I have arrays. Okay, so I put everything into this float array, and then I use a for each. I use some type of looping structure to apply the 2% raise to each employee. So like I said, if I had 50,000 employees, I would still only need these few lines of code here to apply the array, to do the manipulation that I need to do. And let's see what that looks like when we run it. So the results are the same but it's less code. And so one thing you're doing when you're coding, whether you're doing it for fun, for job, for school, for work, whatever, you want to always, use your shortcuts. So just like in math, I know when I was in math class, or even when I did teach math, I was a math professor for a short period of time. One thing people are always looking for, and I did also tutor math. Oh, is there an easier way to do this? Is there a shorter way to do this? So you always want to use your shortcuts because you want to make your programs, you want to build your programs faster, right? You want them to run faster, but you want to build your programs faster so you can get it to market, get it to testing, test all you need to, and then get it to market. So what are some advantages of the arrays? So it's less line of codes during any type of manipulation process. When you need to pass the array to a function, all you have to do is pass that name of the array. Whereas when you weren't using arrays, you'd have to pass all those employee 1, employee 2, employee 500, employee 5,000. So you can pass all the information, okay, with just one name. And then it's scalable, as you saw when you're doing the operations on the data. You don't have to write a line of code for each piece of data. You can use a loop and then loop around and manipulate. So if that function, if that array ever grows to 5,000 or 50,000, I don't have to write any more code. Okay, let's go back to that loop again. If for some reason we had 50,000 employees or even 1,000,000 employees, I never have to write any more code to apply this 2% raise to the employee. Now, you probably will eventually have to write some more code. Maybe there's something else going on. What happens if an employee was only here for 6 months, or when, all this other stuff that could happen. But as far as applying this 2% raise, that's there forever, and I never have to write it again. And so that's the beautiful part. So again, back to some formalities. How do you declare array? You declare array with your type. So this could be float, this could be int, could be whatever. So you declare array with the type, you give it a name, and then you give it some values. And then another way to declare an array, sorry, it's not float, that should be float. Another way to declare an array is array type, square brackets, give it a name, equals new, and then you can say how many you want. You do have to say how many you want. That's one thing about arrays. It's a fixed size, so you do have to say how many of these you need. You can loop through an array to do manipulation. So as we did in the code, we used a for each. You don't have to have this loop counter. I needed the loop counter for the case that I wanted to distinguish between each employee by saying employee 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever. But you don't need a loop counter to loop through that array. You can access, what can go into an array. So any type of value can go into array. Ints, bools, strings, objects. So, and if you want to have an array of different types, so normally array would be singular types. It'd be all ints, it'd be all bools, it'd be all strings, it'd be all floats, it'd be all objects. But if you want to have a mixed bag arrays, which is not recommended, but if you see a need for it, you can. You use the object type. So you make an object array. I think it's obj, and then just the same thing as we did earlier when we were declaring an array. It'd be object here, okay, and then you can put in whatever you want. You can have a mixed bag of arrays. Not recommended because mostly arrays are used for homogeneous data. And when you want to access an element of the array, okay, you use it by putting in an integer. So for example, here we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements in the array. So if I want to access this 55,000, I put a 0 here. Now obviously I started off with 0. I said I equals 0. So so the first time in the loop, I'm accessing the 0th element in the array, which would be this 55,000. And then when I plus plus, that adds 1 to I. So now I is 1. And then I'm accessing this right here. So this is what they call off by 1. So the way the arrays are counted is they start with 0. So normally when we count, we start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the way it works in most coding languages is this is the 0 index. So it would be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So had this been a more formal for loop, where I'd say for I equals to 0, I less than your array length, I plus plus. So when you see that for loop where you have just the word for and not for each, you'd always use the less than versus the less than or equal to, because you count with 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So that is it for array. Thank you for joining me on this video lecture. Hope you have a wonderful time. Good luck on your tests, your quizzes, and your educational journey. Have a wonderful day.